The most important relationship you're ever going to have is the one with yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why would somebody be inspired?
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. We highlight stories of everyday world-changing women and girls on this podcast every single week. It's your host, Kate, here, and I want to encourage you to subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl, REVO. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and our email list so you get all the updates about our latest videos, podcast episodes, and everything else we have going on here. One Girl Revolution is a 501c3 nonprofit multimedia organization dedicated to uplifting the stories of women and girls and their incredible causes and organizations. Please consider a one-time donation and or becoming a monthly donor to help us continue this work and help us to support even more women and girls through this platform. Please visit our website, onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com for all of our podcast episodes, our Emmy-nominated documentary series, donate to our nonprofit organization, and so much more. Now, on to this week's inspiring episode. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I welcome Taryn Lagonigro and Jess Quarello, co-founders of Extra Lucky Moms. Taryn and Jess connected through an online moms group and through their daughters each having Down syndrome. They quickly became friends and decided together to start Extra Lucky Moms, a community for moms with children with differences and disabilities. As their website states, the journey of a special needs mom can be a lonely one. Their mission is to build community amongst mamas and to support each and every mom along her path wherever she is. Extra Lucky Moms provides community support and programs so all moms can not only survive, but thrive. Jess and Taryn recently released a book, Dear Mama, Stories of an Extra Lucky Life, which is a collection of essays written for the Extra Lucky community by the Extra Lucky community. You are going to be so inspired by these two mamas, their stories, and by this incredible community that they've created. Here's my conversation with Taryn and Jess. Jess and Taryn, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks so much for having us. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. There's so much that I want to cover about your lives, your stories, Extra Lucky Moms, all the great work that you're doing through that community, your new book that just came out a couple of weeks ago. So many things that I want to cover. And so I would love to just rewind before we get into your stories now and the work that you're doing now. But I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you about your story, who you are, where you're from. And so, Jess, I'll start with you. Could you tell me a little bit about your own story and where you're from and who you are? Yes, of course. Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me and then both of us.
So I was born in Sweden, grew up in North Carolina, though. We moved here when I was about 1 year old and spent my life in music and theater and always wanted to be, a performer. Went to college for musical theater and then ended up in New York City right after graduation and pursued a modeling and acting and performance career for about 10 years now. And then I met my husband and sort of decided to take a step back from that. I wanted to have a little bit more of a normal life trajectory, a little bit more of a normal schedule. And I got into fashion and built my corporate career as a stylist and did marketing and really sort of all kinds of different things. And then at the end of my corporate career was working in nonprofit. And then COVID hit. And I was pregnant at the time with my second daughter. I have two girls. I have a 5-year-old named Charlie and a 2-year-old named Adeline. And when Adeline was born, we experienced a birth diagnosis of Down syndrome, which was at the time extremely difficult to navigate, but ultimately it has propelled me into a life of advocacy. And through her and my incredible, community that I've been so lucky to sort of, build, I met Taryn and we started Extra Lucky Moms, which I don't want to jump gun, but that's where my journey took me. And it all really kind of started with Adeline's birth diagnosis. So
yeah. And
that's me in a nutshell.
I want to talk about that too, Jess, but before we get into that and your stories with Adeline, Taryn, what about you? Tell me a little bit about your story, who you are, where you're from, and what led you to this moment.
So I've lived in New Jersey my whole life, born, raised, other than a brief stint in college in New York, have been here the whole time. I've always been sort of a doer. I was always involved in a lot in, high school, college, all the things. So I've kind of had this like entrepreneurial spirit my whole life. I wasn't like the type to just like make bracelets. I wanted to turn it into like a, roadside bracelet stand. Like I can't just do things. They have to like become annoyingly bigger things. So after having two girls, I kind of went through a lot of mental health issues, just navigating how to, find myself and keep myself in focus while, being a mom to two very young little girls. So I went through a lot of depression and anxiety, pulled myself out of that through some tools, including like yoga and meditation. Wound up like I do, getting into the yoga side, became a yoga teacher, opened up a yoga studio. All the while I had a corporate job and was kind of climbing the ladder there. Wound up having two more girls. My daughter, Rhea, was born in March of 2020, like 2 weeks after the pandemic hit. And she had a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. So I know we'll get into all of that as well. But in October of 2021, I decided to take a step back from corporate life and just focus on some of these other things that I had going on, including being a mom to 4 children. That's also a job, a full-time job. And I still I was in the financial technology industry. I still do some consulting in that industry as well. So, that's a lot in how long was that? 30 seconds.
There's so many facets to life. And that's what I love about each of your stories too. And even what led you to start Extra Lucky Moms. It's like life kind of has a way of shaking itself out and pointing us in the right direction where we're supposed to be. And we're obviously like multifaceted beings and life is full of many chapters. But I want to talk about the chapter with Addie and Rhea and kind of how Extra Lucky Mom started. So Jess, I'd love to kind of go back to what you were saying before about Addie. So you didn't know before she was born that she had Down syndrome. So can you tell me about when you found out and kind of what was going through your head at that moment?
Yeah. So what was fascinating about my birth experience was during my pregnancy, I was actually really monitored because I had a lot of complications. I write about this in my book, but I had spinal stenosis. And so I was being monitored for growth every month. Addie had passed first trimester blood work. So, we went into this delivery with complete, faith that she was going to be a typical little girl, just like our older daughter, Charlie. And next thing you know, she comes out. I had a C-section and they bring my husband over to meet his daughter as they're sewing me back up. And out of nowhere, the pediatrician is sort of accosting him with this information and saying, look, your daughter has Down syndrome, and showing him, her hands and showing her her sandal gap in her toes and pulling up her neck folds on her neck and just being so horrible. And my husband then started to almost pass out, had to leave the OR. It was very, very traumatic. So to say that our experience did not start off on the right foot, it was extremely traumatic. And I didn't even get to touch her or hold her for 18 hours. That really sparked a fire in me once I got my mind, around it. I mean, it took time. I was in shock. Then there was the denial before we got the testing back. Like, no, she doesn't have Down syndrome. She just might look a little bit different because of the placement of her head in my pelvis during pregnancy. Like there were all of these things going through my head. Right. And then there was grief because of the fact that I was anticipating a typical child and didn't get what I thought I was getting in this whole pregnancy experience. And so there was grief of the loss of the child I wanted and then acceptance of loving and providing for the one that I was gifted with. And so they were all the big we call them big feelings in our family. So lots of big feelings. But ultimately, I fell in love with her, and she became this perfect little being that I just loved so much. And I slowly started to see Adeline first and her diagnosis second. And once I was ready, it took a couple of months for us to sort of sit with this. I'm also an influencer on social media. And so I kind of went dark for a few months, and people were confused as to what was going on. But I just wasn't ready to share this news with the world. I was barely ready to handle it myself. But once we did announce we wanted to tell our friends and family offline and just have it be more of an intimate sharing experience. And ultimately, once sort of our people knew, we felt comfortable going kind of like live, if you will. And the response we received was so incredible. It really propelled me to start reaching out. And so that's how I met Taryn. We actually were pretty much pen pals, essentially, in a WhatsApp group of 40 other women for 6 or 7 months. And when you're in a group of 40 women on a WhatsApp, and all of these women were connected via the DSDN, and they do these birth groups where they set women up with kids with Down syndrome, that have had children the same month, so we can kind of share and be support for each other. And we took it off of the Facebook and brought it to WhatsApp. And but when you're in a group of 40 women, you kind of get to know who your people are, who's having a glass of wine on the Thursday? Oh, Taryn is. Me too. Okay, she's my girl. And so we started, to become pen pal friends. And luckily, we live very close to each other. So we ended up finally, this was COVID time, so no one was really meeting anybody. But we finally got to meet in person on World Down Syndrome Day, 2021, March 2021. So that was really cool. And yeah, so I know that's a lot. It was really important that it was written down. So I wrote my birth story really quickly after I had Adeline. And I used that for my letter in our book that we just had come out, because I wanted to have a safe space where a mom could sit down and read it and ingest it. And it wasn't something I felt comfortable kind of just putting on Instagram. There's a lot to it, but I encourage anyone that has experienced a birth diagnosis. I go there in my essay. I'm really raw, and we really believe that vulnerability leads to connection, and vulnerability equals strength. So I try to be as authentic in sharing how tough it was, because we all need to know that we're not alone.
I think your experience, Jess, and I'm sure, Taryn, you had a similar experience where life can feel so isolating. Being a mom can be so isolating, but then being a mom of a child with Down syndrome or something else, right? There are so many things. And I know even in Extra Lucky Moms, there are a variety of things that people come to you with their own experiences. It's not all just Down syndrome, but that can be really isolating, where you look around your community and you're like, well, nobody else has experience with Down syndrome. So yeah, who am I supposed to turn to? And it's just incredible that what you're building. But I think that your experience, Jess, is similar to so many people. It's like once you find your people and you're like, oh, me too. And then you can share your own experiences and frustrations and joys and all the different aspects that we deal with in life. It's so important. So Taryn, I want to kick it over to you. Tell me about when Rhea was diagnosed with Down syndrome, when you found out about her diagnosis and your experience.
Yeah, so I actually found out during our first trimester screen that something was quote unquote wrong. And then we had a CVS test, which I always mess up what that stands for, so I'm not going to try. We just wanted to know. We wanted to have the information. I'm not good with surprises, and I'm not good with just waiting another 6 months to find out what's going on. So we did get confirmation by the time I was between 13 and 14 weeks pregnant, that she would have Down syndrome. And, we always talk so much about what's harder, the birth diagnosis, the prenatal diagnosis. And in a lot of ways, I think you have the time when you have a prenatal diagnosis to prepare. But I also had these 6 months before my baby was in my arms to make up all these stories about how this whole thing was going to go. And it was very isolating. I didn't know anybody who had Down syndrome. I had grown up with connections to the disability community because I have I had an uncle who was disabled that my mom cared for most of my life, but just hadn't had experience with people with Down syndrome, especially in like this time. Like I remember when I was a kid, and we would go to events for my uncle, like meeting, seeing people with Down syndrome and all of that, but just not having an adult experience personally with somebody with Down syndrome. So again, you make up stories when you don't understand something, you make up stories in your head. And that's part of our mission, is to kind of eliminate that not knowing, right? To put stuff out there, to get us all talking about things, because we fear what we don't know, especially like children. Children make up stories. If you don't, fill in the gaps for them, they'll fill in the gaps themselves. And it's usually not with reality. So yeah, I spent 6 months kind of in this fog, making up all these stories in my head, having all of these doctor's appointments that were very, very intense, and, being reminded multiple times that I could, change my mind by the time I was 22 weeks pregnant and all of those things. And we just felt really strongly about moving forward. We felt like we could handle it. It was hard we never didn't accept her. It was just hard, thinking of what was to come. She also had a hole in her heart that we found out about 16 weeks pregnant. So we knew that entire time as well that she would need open heart surgery when she was an infant. Honestly, most of the time that was harder than the Down syndrome diagnosis, because that came with the unknowns of, would she survive something, or, what was her health going to be like when she was born, and all of those things. So it was very stressful. And then 2 weeks before I was going to give birth, the entire world shut down, and all of a sudden my husband couldn't come with me to things. And, I didn't have any kind of support system at all. Luckily, we were kind of preparing for a very long NICU stay because of her heart issues. And I, am so thankful all the time that she actually came out of the hospital after 4 days, because managing that during COVID would have been absolutely insane. Like the 2 days. So when I got discharged 2 days after giving birth, she was there 2 extra days. I could honestly barely spend much time with her because my husband was still trying to work. So I would go like first thing in the morning and spend like an hour, and then right at night and spend an hour. So because we couldn't have any childcare because of COVID. So I'm always grateful that she was a trooper and got out of there, graduated out of there very quickly, because that was a crazy time. But yeah, so, she had her surgery when she was 2 months old. She did fantastic with that as well. She has a fully repaired heart, and she's been great ever since.
What a wild time in our world to have a baby, but then to be navigating all of this. And that's the gift of social media. That's the gift of WhatsApp, how you both connected and built community. Yeah. And I know there are so many people that build community, and the Down syndrome community is such an incredible beacon of light to me, following all these different amazing organizations, and they really step up and build support around their people, which is incredible. And that's why I've been so inspired by Extra Lucky Moms and everything they're doing there. Before we get into Extra Lucky Moms, I want to hear a little bit about your girls now, because I know that you've been through so much with them, and I know that they inspire you every single day. Taryn, I'll start with you. Tell me about Rhea, and how does she inspire you?
When I think about, like I mentioned before, those stories that I made up in my head when I was pregnant with her, and I think about now, it's like, sometimes I just want to laugh right. Because there's honestly moments that I forget she has Down syndrome. I always tell this story. I was away on vacation one time, like last year, and somebody came up to me and starts talking to me, telling me that they're a special education teacher. And for a minute, I'm like, why is this person talking to me? Why is she telling me all this? And it turns out that she obviously realized that Rhea has Down syndrome. And it was like 30 seconds of this woman talking to me to realize, like, oh, she's talking to me because my daughter has Down syndrome. Like life is very much more typical than not. And I feel very blessed to say that. She, she's a typical toddler. And I actually say that with a hint of sarcasm because, she's spicy. She puts her foot down when she wants to, which is often. She has her own personality, but she's great. She's healthy and happy. She started preschool a couple weeks, about a month ago, and she's doing really well there. The aide brought her out yesterday and said, everybody Rhea's a magnet to all the kids in the class. They all just want to play with her all the time. And we're just feeling very grateful right now at the place that she's in. She gives us a run for our money. I don't want to sugarcoat that, but I don't know what 3-year-old doesn't give their parents a run for their money.
Especially 3-year-old little girls. I feel like they give.
Yes. Big personalities.
Yeah. Jess, tell me about Addie.
Oh my goodness. Well, we too are in the toddler zone, which is funny because she was such like the easiest baby. I remember when she was born, I was like, oh my gosh, my life is over. I'm never going to sleep again. This kid was sleeping through the night at 5 weeks old. Like she has been this dream baby. She inspires me so much. These kids work so hard. I mean, Taryn and I have been in the same early intervention group through a school out in Roseland, New Jersey called Stepping Stones. And they've been in early intervention together for almost 3 full years now. And to see their progression and how hard that they have worked to do all the things that, we all take for granted, like walking and talking and all these things is tremendous. They're thriving. She is the sweetest kiddo. She loves everybody. She's always asking to give people hugs. She is wild. She will not stay with me. She is running from her mother any chance she gets. She has zero fear, which is pretty typical for toddlers. I don't remember my daughter Charlie scaling furniture. I told her physical therapist yesterday, I was like, I'm pretty sure that physical therapy is working. Could we maybe start working on some other skills than climbing?
Dial it back a little.
Yeah, like we're good. I found her standing like on my kitchen table the other day. I went to the bathroom for 2 seconds. And I come out, she's just like on my kitchen table, like, hey. I'm like, hey, get down. Yeah. But she's amazing. She's, she and her sister together brings me so much joy. And her friendship with Rhea is so beautiful to watch. They love each other. They've known each other since they were little bitty babies, and, they're best buds. And I don't know what else to say. She's just like the light of our lives and our family. And we're just so in love with her and would not change a hair in her head.
Yeah. It's probably really special for the two of them too, to have someone, even though they're little still, but to have someone who understands what they're going through. And my brother has autism, and that was one thing that he a lot of times felt like he was misunderstood. Like, oh, people don't understand what I'm going through or the world that I'm living in, because some things he experienced differently. And so it's probably really special for them, even being so little, to have a little buddy, and that'll be really beautiful to see them walk through life together.
Same goes for Taryn and I. That's why we started Extra Lucky Moms, because Taryn and I were kind of like the first community member that we built, and we leaned on each other tremendously and still do. And, as much as I have such an amazing family and I have incredible girlfriends that I've had for, years and years and years, they don't have a child with a disability. And so they don't know what it's like to go through life on this extra lucky journey, but Taryn does. And so it's so nice to have somebody that just can hold space and literally understands exactly what you're going through at every moment. And also to like celebrate, I remember Addie said one of her first words, like, Taryn knew that. And she was like, yes, Another mom might've been like, oh, okay, cool, great. My kid did that like 6 months ago. But Taryn knows the journey, and how exciting this is. So it's important on both ends. But I actually just, we're moving next week closer to Taryn and her family, which we're so excited about. So the girls will be even closer. So we're excited to get out there.
That's awesome. Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate. Well, okay, let's talk about Extra Lucky Moms. So you met in person for the first time in March 2021. And from what I know, Extra Lucky Moms technically started in May 2021.
Yeah.
What was the moment, like what made you want to start this group? I know that you had become friends, but what was there like a spark moment where you were like, all right, we need to do this. This is how we're going to do it. And this is where we want to start things.
We both just felt like we were called to do something, and we were kind of brainstorming different things. And we each had friends in our lives that had children with like a more rare diagnosis or not a diagnosis, and had, we're heading towards a diagnosis, for example. And we felt like, what we both found from the Down syndrome community, like you mentioned before, is just such a bright light. There's so many organizations that are specific to people with Down syndrome that are just amazing. And we just felt like, gosh, like, let's do that. Like, let's, first of all, not reinvent the wheel. We don't need to do exactly what everybody else is doing, but let's make this like for everybody, where, I might not be able to walk exactly in the shoes of somebody who's raising a child with autism, for example. However, like, I can understand a lot of their underlying feelings. I can understand those wins, those hard things, like all of those things. So why do we need to like put ourselves in boxes? And what about those communities that aren't large and loud, like the Down syndrome community? So that's what's been cool, is like some of like our closest or most involved community members are moms of children with very rare diagnoses. Like our friend Michelle, her daughter is like one of 700 people in the world that has Jordan syndrome. I think it's 700. So, like having her be a part of our community has been amazing, because first of all, like Jess and I always say, this whole thing, it was like started selfishly. Like we started this to learn more, and like we've learned so much. Like I'm so proud of the things that we've learned, and the fact that I can say like, yeah, I know somebody who has Jordan syndrome, or yeah, I know somebody who has Cornelia de Lange syndrome. Yeah, I know somebody who has that micro deletion of that chromosome. So that's what's been really cool, is just like opening our own eyes and helping other people see all of this as well.
Jess, tell me about the name Extra Lucky Moms. How did you guys come up with the name, and what does that mean to you?
So it really happened. It was so serendipitous. So we, as Sharon said, we were advocates, but we wanted to do something. We wanted to funnel our advocacy, and we were like-minded, and we were like, we got to do something with this, like inside. So we're just sort of like, I think we were just on the phone and texting back and forth. And, we were just sort of throwing things around like lucky and extra, and we're moms. And it just sort of kind of all of a sudden came together, and we were like Extra Lucky Moms. And extra, sort of represents all of the extra, love that we have for our kids, the extra requirements that they demand with therapies, and also the extra chromosome that our children, with Down syndrome have. Lucky, the way that we feel to be on this journey, and how we feel to love these children, and moms because we're moms. And I couldn't believe it when we were looking on all platforms that was available. And it just felt very much a universe thing, saying like, this is supposed to happen. And so we scooped up all the platforms, we took the names, and then we put our heads together and just started. Like we just started, and
we would
so
like cheer
surreal.
every time somebody followed us, we'd be like, yay, somebody followed.
Yes. Seriously. I'd be like, oh my God, we're at 50 followers. Like I remember when we were celebrating like 100 followers,
Yeah.
And now it's sort of like a household thing where we use the term Extra Lucky Mom, which is what our dream has always been, to build this. So yeah, it just happened so organically, and then we just started, and here we are. It's crazy.
Taryn, tell me about the community. Tell me about what is Extra Lucky Moms for people that don't know, people that are listening.
It's, as far as what the community itself is just a safe space for moms. And it's a place where we have people write for our blog, and the only guideline we ever give people is to just be as honest as possible. And it's what we also asked for the people who wrote letters in our book, Dear Mama, was just be honest and be raw and be open, but also, gush about how much you love your kid. Like, all of those feelings coexist, because I think that's where you don't want to like gaslight how people are feeling and just hit them with all of the positive things, or be this super negative platform either. Like, we want people to just understand that whatever feelings they're feeling are okay, and they'll come out the other side of it. And then there might be days where they're going to feel those hard feelings again. And then the next day they'll start over and feel better. But it's important to help people feel validated in that, and not just say, everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Like, people need to see the progression that we've all gone through in accepting our children's diagnosis, or navigating through it, or navigating through the education side or the medical side, or all of these things. We need to have reality when we talk about it, so that we can also make change. So that the community itself is that's what we want to be for moms. And then we also like take all of these things that we learn, and Jess and I turn it into how can we educate more broadly. So that's the point of us doing podcasts and articles. And we've had several corporate speaking engagements now, which is one of our favorite things, because it allows us to hit an audience that maybe didn't realize what they need to learn, or maybe don't think that they need to know that right now, but then you never know who could cross their path. Because, companies have all of these diversity and inclusion initiatives now, and part of that is the disability community. So we want to share about, first of all, how to be a supportive manager or employee or ally to the disability community, but also like how to ask for help too. If you get a diagnosis and you need to talk to your manager about things, or figure out how to keep up your working life while you're managing everything else in your family life. We want people to be able to be successful in kind of managing both of those things. I say that when I left corporate, it was because I chose to. I didn't feel pushed out, and up and until when I left, I was able to have open dialogue with my employer about how I needed to juggle things and how I needed to manage things. So that's part of it, is me trying to share that back with other people as well. And, because there's just such a high burnout rate in our community, and such a high rate of people having to step away. And I think that we can be a part of changing that.
Jess, why is Extra Lucky Moms so important? And like, why now? I think that so many things are changing in the culture in a good way from my perspective. We're seeing Down syndrome represented more and more in the culture, even like advertising. But why is Extra Lucky Moms, that community, so important?
I think we've been really lucky to have our children grow up in a world where we are talking about inclusion, through Black Lives Matter, or through, all of these different initiatives. We're finally, the people that need to have their voices heard are finally getting that chance. And we really feel strongly that the disability community is next, and they need to have their voices heard. And a big part of our why behind Extra Lucky Moms is, I'll speak for myself, but I was so ignorant to how beautiful this life could be when my daughter was born. So much so that I said to myself, once I got on the other side, I have to teach people not to be so scared of this. Not because I want people to make the choice, I'm always, everybody gets to make their own life choices. If this life of, disability isn't for you, and you don't want to move forward with your pregnancy, that is on you. But if I can teach somebody, one person, and show them the beauty that is this life, I've done my job and changed and advocated for my daughter. So for us, it was just so important to spread the joy of disability motherhood and disability parenthood, because neither of us knew it. And if we had had just a glimpse, if we had this book when we delivered our children, it would have really changed our trajectory. It would have helped us with our mental health. It would have just made a huge difference. And so for us, it wasn't a matter of like, should we do this? It was like, we have to do this, and we have to do this authentically. And we're moms. And so we needed to create a safe space where we could, unload our feelings and we could share with other moms. Selfishly, we started it for ourselves. We wanted that place. We wanted more connection. We saw the impact that it had just between the two of us. And we said, we can replicate this. We can make this bigger. We can make change for others. And what was so crazy is that when we launched, it resonated. People were like, oh, and it didn't exist. There wasn't this place for everyone to come to. There was little subgroups of the loud, proud Down syndrome community, the autism community, all these little subgroups. This was finally a place for all moms to come together and commiserate, celebrate, and, be together. So it was just not a matter of when or should we. It was like, we got to do this now.
And I think too, like, the more that we can educate, the more that we can have an understanding of people with disability. Like, I think, my husband and I were just talking about this the other day. Like, I think back to when like I was a kid and there were like the bad kids in the classroom. They were honestly probably children that had some sort of disability that needed some sort of intervention, and people just didn't understand that. So then these children just become the bad kids. And I've even like turned that into like how I talk to my kids about, if there's somebody who's, doing something different in their classroom or doing something that, maybe irritates them in their classroom. Like, I've tried to speak to them about it in a way like, yeah, that person might do something a little bit differently than you, or they might need to, move their body a little bit more, to get their wiggles out a little more, to be able to sit down at their desk and learn. So, I think it's important that we all have these conversations, because I think unfortunately, we default to putting people in a box and saying, well, that's just how they are, or that's just like, they're just bad. I need to stay away from them, or, and I think it's just understanding, having more open mind about people is really important.
That's a big part of this podcast. Even I think so often we put other people, like you said, in boxes. We put other women in boxes. We see things on Instagram, or we see other people's children and we judge their parenting, or we judge what's going on with that situation. But that's so beautiful to think about the bad kids, the quote unquote bad kids in school. And the reality is so many things are in our food, right? Like that could be affecting ADHD. I know that's starting to become a conversation. Then there's mental health issues. Then like, who knows what's going on, but really teaching children also to recognize those differences and like our uniqueness, and like, yeah, maybe this other kid learns in a different way, or maybe they're struggling with something, or maybe it's insecurity, right? Bullying so often is fear or insecurity, where the kid is like, insecure about what's going on in the situation. And so they act out on that. And so that's really beautiful to think about. Mm-hmm. Is there a story that I'm kind of putting both of you on the spot, but I love stories, and this podcast is all about those. Is there a story or two, maybe I'll have each of you share one, about someone who has been helped through the Extra Lucky Moms community that you could share?
Oh my gosh, where do I even begin? That's been something that was, our why, right? Like, we wanted to help. There are so many people, we get comments, especially now that the book is out, from especially new moms. I just connected with a mom on Instagram, and she just had her baby 6 months ago. She had a birth diagnosis, and she DM'd me on Instagram yesterday and said, I just read your essay or your letter in the book. And I am so thankful that I read it, yours first, because I just really connect with your story. And, thank you for being so vulnerable. there's been so many of those sort of stories that we've been able to tell and to help others, like brings us so much joy. We've been able to raise money for nonprofits that we really believe in. We've been able to do events where we provide respite for moms. I remember our very first event, I don't even know, we probably had like 20 people, 15 people. And it to this day was like my favorite event. It was so surreal to have all these people show up and be together. And we had an incredible woman, her name is Allison Marcella, come and speak to a group. She's a social worker at the Valley Health System in New Jersey. And she just shared her story and was able to provide, resources and connection. And she gave her email to everyone at the event. I mean, I could go on and on, and really just share the impact that we have been able to make. And it's, we always say this is like our life's work that we do at Extra Lucky Moms.
It's your legacy, that you're building, and your children's legacy as well. It's beautiful. Taryn, what about you?
I think one of my favorite things that's happened in the last couple months is that this woman purchased the book, and in the notes she wrote, "I'm a genetic counselor and I'm looking forward to reading this book and learning about how I can deliver diagnoses better." And I obviously don't have the end result of that. We hope to connect with her and like really see like how things have changed. But the fact that like, that's exactly outside of the moms that we want to be supported by this book, like that's exactly the hands that we want the book in as well, because that is huge. So that to me, like whether we sell 50,000 books someday or 500, that to me is everything. That's worth everything to me. Because if that makes somebody else's experience better because that woman learned something, that's amazing. And then, as far as like a mom, I come back to like our friend Michelle, who her daughter has Jordan syndrome. Like I said, it's like 700 people who have been diagnosed with Jordan syndrome in the world. And when you think about, when you whittle that down to like how many people would reach out and would, create connection, it's probably such a small group. So the fact that like she's been able to be a part of our community and like our kids are going to play together someday. Like she lives in New Jersey, like our kids will play together at some point, and like just to like have her in our world, it means so much to me. So I don't know if that's how it benefited me, but I know that it's been important. She said it's been fundamental to her to have this larger community to be able to access.
That's what happens when you bring women together, where it's almost this circular motion where it's like, okay, you're helping people, you're creating this community to help others, but it pays right back to you, and you are benefiting from this organization and from this platform. And I know so many people are touched by it and have been. And even I loved what you mentioned just about the medical community. I think that a lot of times, and even on this podcast, I had different people on who have said that the lead from the medical community, from the doctors, whomever, is, "I'm so sorry." That's how they lead into the conversation. And so even changing how we enter into that conversation is so important and so critical for women, because it's fear and uncertainty, like you both have shared about, like, we don't know what the future holds, and our human experience is always to run away from something that we're afraid of or something that we don't know or don't understand. And so you're really creating this space for people to have conversations. So I know that you've mentioned the book a couple of times. How did the book come to be, and what can you tell me about it? Taryn, I'll start with you and then we'll hop over to Jess.
We just felt called. I had published a book last year, and we just felt called to put something like this together, because there are just like how Extra Lucky Mom started, there are books, especially in the Down syndrome community, that are stories from moms. But there's nothing that we had ever found that was, again, like an inclusive book. And obviously we know one book isn't going to cover every disability that's out there. But we were really intentional about making sure that we had a nice blend of, we do have, I would say, probably more autism moms and Down syndrome moms than anything else, but we have representation from over a dozen different disabilities, including like heart conditions and things like that. So we just felt like, it takes a little while for a mom who gets a diagnosis to maybe feel comfortable Googling or going to, which we really don't want her Googling, but like trying to find organizations and, or going to Instagram and searching for families. That takes a little bit of time. But if we could get this book in hospitals and genetic counseling offices and all of that, so that it could be something that's handed to a mom with the other stack of papers that are handed to her, because we all got that stack of pamphlets of medical things and all of the statistics and all the things that freak you out when you're getting that diagnosis. But if the book could be on top of that as well, something for her to hold in her hands and look through and maybe see feelings that she is feeling, but also see the hope and the love and all of the things, that's our dream.
The book has been such a labor of love. And we wanted this to be something that could be in duality with the reality, right? Like, obviously, when you get the diagnosis, it's shocking, it's terrifying, it's all the things. And you need that paperwork that they give you, that 100, paper copied handout with like everything that could be possibly going wrong down the line with your child with Down syndrome. I mean, I remember getting that paperwork being like, oh my God, like, what are we in for? And meanwhile, she maybe has 2 of those things on the list, but at the time it's so overwhelming. But if I had gotten that pamphlet and paperwork with this book, it would have been a game changer. And we wanted to have the book be also written from moms to moms. We wanted it to be framed where we were holding space immediately for that mom. So every single story in the book is a letter. It starts out, "Dear Mama," and everyone starts their letter differently, in this, and everyone has a different perspective. Yet the real theme of this book is pretty universal. And that is, we know this sucks right now. We're holding space for you wherever you are on your journey, whether that's grief, disappointment, devastation. And, we will be there when you come onto the other side, and we will always, hold space for you until you get there. That's really the theme of this book. Everyone has that journey in every story, despite their experience that may be completely different, or their diagnosis that might be completely different. So, this book has hundreds of hours poured into it. We wanted it to be everything to a new mom. And when we're starting to get these responses from moms saying, like, I got a text yesterday from a girlfriend who doesn't have a child with a disability at all. She's just a supportive friend. And she was like, this book has opened my eyes to so much. And so now we have, another advocate that's a step outside. So, if we can get this book into the hands of everybody, it's not just for the disability community, it's for everyone. The more we know, the more dynamic we can be as people. And, we've built out a wholesale program, obviously for, retail shops and what have you, but we also have a nonprofit and hospital program. So if hospitals are interested in purchasing our book wholesale to then just have on hand when they have a mom with a birth diagnosis, or maybe a pediatrician's office, or an OB can give the book to a mother that's maybe on the fence of whether or not to continue with her pregnancy. Perhaps this book will give her a different perspective, whatever she may choose. We'd love to share this book with her. So I could just talk about these stories. I think I've read this book like 1,600 times at this point. But I really think that it has if I do say so myself, have the capacity to be really life-changing.
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone to get a copy of the book. I will be sure to put the link in our show notes so people can easily access it. But even like you mentioned, we can buy it for other people too, right? Maybe we know somebody in the disability community, or the reality is whether we recognize it or not, open your eyes and look around, because there are so many people who have differences or disabilities in our own life, unless we're living in a little pocket, in a little silo, and not opening our eyes, but open your eyes to the community. And really, I encourage everyone to read this book, because we need to go into this world eyes wide open and look for ways to support people.
Watch One Girl Revolution's Emmy-nominated short documentary, The Girl Inside, on our YouTube channel or at onegirlrevolution.com. The Girl Inside features a poignant look at the stories of incarcerated women within Cook County Jail and a life-changing academic course taught by Dr. Laura Biaggi called Storytelling as a Healing Art. This short documentary reunites Dr. Biaggi with 5 of her former students for a special one-day course on the transformative power of our stories and our voices. And what is revealed is the girl inside. Watch the Emmy-nominated short documentary, The Girl Inside, today on YouTube or at onegirlrevolution.com.
I want to ask you both, and maybe I'll start with you, Jess, how can people get involved in your work? If they, maybe they have a child with a disability or a difference and they want to get involved in Extra Lucky Moms. And then what can people do to support you? Obviously, buy the book and share it. If they have an organization or a doctor's office, like you mentioned, buy it at wholesale and gift it out to people. People can invite you to speak. So you mentioned about corporate speaking engagements. People can invite you to speak. But Jess, how can people get involved in the Extra Lucky Moms community, and how can they support your work?
We would love for everyone to hop onto our website and subscribe. We, have newsletters and emails that go out with events and resources. We also would encourage everyone to follow us on our Instagram and our LinkedIn and our Facebook. That's a really great way to connect. Obviously, visit our blog and, sort of discover all of these stories. And one of the best ways to connect with other Extra Lucky Moms is to write for our blog. We love sharing new stories. Everyone is welcome. We've had individuals with children with disabilities. We've had individuals with disabilities write for our blog. We've had dads, doctors, professionals. So get involved by reaching out and writing for our blog. And what's so cool is someone will write for the blog about a certain topic, and then somebody that follows us will be like, oh my God, I'm so excited to read this. I just connected with her, and now we have this little friendship over here, and we're starting this little community. But spreading the joy of disability motherhood and really just being vulnerable and allowing yourself to open up and comment on people's, posts that we share to build that connection that's really the best way. And then obviously, we have our book that's out. We'd love for your support. If you know somebody in a hospital setting that we could connect with, please reach out to us so that we could send them our wholesale package for a hospital or if you're a doctor and you want to connect with us, we will send you our PR deck and everything in the book. We just want to get this in everybody's hands, so you could help connect us with the right people. Community is everything. And if that, I knew that before, but I really know that now.
Taryn, same question for you. If there's anything you have to add, but also what can we all do to emulate the work that you're doing through Extra Lucky Moms? What can we do for other moms or to build community around someone who might be in the disability community or have a child with a disability?
I think the most important thing is to have an open mind to, what their children might be experiencing, but also just an open mind to the fact that maybe you don't understand every component of their life. And I don't say that to again, alienate us in two different worlds. I have a child with a disability, so therefore you can't possibly understand me. I think that's the thing, is that we too often will look at the negative side of something or make a decision about something, basically. Taryn takes a week to call me back, or you know what I'm saying? Without just maybe having a little bit of understanding that there's so much that goes on in this world that we don't see. I don't share every single thing that we do on social media. I share a lot, but I don't share the ins and outs. I think just having some understanding and like, I think too often when we are trying to provide support to somebody, we will say, oh, let me know what you need. Sometimes we just, and this goes for everybody who's going through something. Sometimes we just need to show up, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean physically, but maybe just some tiny little gesture to let somebody know that you're thinking of them. Leaving their favorite beverage on the doorstep and saying, hey, I left something for you to just relax tonight, or saying, hey, can I come over and unload your dishwasher while you take a few minutes to just chill, without it being like a question or waiting for the person to say something, because we're all probably very bad at, asking for help. So sometimes taking that thinking out, I think is really important in our community.
I remember during COVID, so many people were like, well, one thing that I was like trying to do, because I was inspired by these kids out of Arkansas, 3 Wishes for Ruby's residents, they would handwrite cards to seniors and senior living facilities. And I was like, oh, that's something I can do. Like, that's a lost art where people don't handwrite cards anymore. But even something like that, like that's something that I've really tried to continue doing. I started doing it during COVID because I was like, well, I'm stuck at home. I may as well handwrite some cards. But even little gestures like that can make such an impact on someone's life, or even a text message. Hey, I'm just thinking about you. You don't even need to expect a response back, and don't expect a response back.
There was a friend of mine who was going through a hard thing maybe 6 months ago. And I sent her like through text, like a $5 $10 Starbucks gift card. And she was like, you don't know what that meant to me. Like, just buying me coffee. And it's little, like, again, like, we don't have to like go out for extravagant dinners or whatever. Sometimes it takes $5 to let somebody know that you're thinking of them, and for that to make all the difference in their day. It also can take $0 to let somebody know that. But just letting somebody know they're doing a good job and that you're here for them when they need it, and you'll be there for the long haul, is really important. Because I think that, especially a mom who's in the thick of it, there's just not a lot of time for other things. There's not a lot of time to make sure that you're keeping up with every friendship and all of that. So I think just understanding that we're all in a season, we all go through seasons of life, and that, knowing that your people will be there when you come out of this season that you're in, it just takes a lot of the weight off.
Well, Jess and Taryn, I have so loved getting to know you and hear more about Extra Lucky Moms and all the great work that you're doing. I will post all of your social media links, your website, the link to the book, and any other resources that we mentioned in this episode, so people can easily get in touch with you and get connected with Extra Lucky Moms and everything that you're doing. And I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing. But before I let you go, I have 2 final questions. So the first one, and Jess, I'll start with you. Who is a one girl revolution in your life? You are a one girl revolution. Taryn, you're a one girl revolution. But Jess, who is a one girl revolution, a woman or girl that inspires you?
Well, obviously my daughters inspire me every single day. But I'd like to honor my friend Ashley. She had she's the little sister, but her older sister Danielle passed away in 2011. But she had a very rare chromosomal abnormality and had never, walked or talked. A lot of disabilities she was disabled. And so her mother, who we in part have dedicated the book to, was sort of like this trailblazer in advocacy. And she was a music teacher. Terry, Ashley's mom, my best friend. She was a music teacher, and she would always invite the individuals with disabilities, including her daughter, to the classroom, which was very not, the way it was back then. She was really a trailblazer. And unfortunately, we lost Terry. She passed away shortly after Ashley had her firstborn daughter, Molly. And which was devastating, such a devastating loss for all of us. But seeing how she has, really thrived raising her daughter, the way she has committed herself to her mental health, to focusing on healing, and to raise her daughter with her mother's legacy trailing, behind her has been so inspiring. She is just someone I think hangs the moon, and I'm so proud to be her best friend. And I'm so excited because I'm going to be living 15 minutes from her pretty soon. So I'd love to honor Ashley for sure.
Taryn, what about you? Who's a one girl revolution, a woman or girl that inspires you?
So I don't know if I can say one, but I'm going to say one category, which is the moms who have come before. I feel like all of us in the disability community are, we leave a little trail behind us where we go. And the moms who have come before us have just made all of these moments possible because, even 30, 35 years ago, if you had a child with Down syndrome, the first thing that they would offer you is to institutionalize your child. And most people did do that. And so that, there were moms who were bold enough to start taking their children home. There were moms who were bold enough to fight for their children to have life-saving surgeries because, especially in the disability community, there's so much that's a misconception as a comorbidity. So they would immediately say, like, somebody with Down syndrome can't have the heart surgery that my daughter so easily had. So these moms who just didn't take no for an answer and fought for change. There's the moms who, have trailblazed our children being in inclusive education and being able to just even have education. Like every generation has done something to make it easier for the next generation. And I don't know even what our generation's thing is yet and what we're going to change,
right.
But I look forward to us all leaving that trail as well.
Well, Extra Lucky Moms is trailblazing. Both of you individually are, together you are, and then the whole community as well. And I can't wait to see where you go from here. So the last question that I always end this podcast on, because we're dedicated to women and girls around the world. And Jess, I'll start with you again. If you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
One message. I think this has been something I've learned as I've sort of fallen into my role as mother, wife, and just real, human being, knowing who I am, is to the most important relationship you're ever going to have is the one with yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why would somebody be inspired to believe in you? And so I've done a lot of work for my children and for my community to focus on the love that I have for myself. And ever since I've done that, I've received so much from this world. I'm at this place, I'm 35 years old. I love who I am. I know what my life's work is. And I also am okay with growing and changing and moving forward. And so I would encourage all women and girls to focus on the good within yourself and to love yourself and to work on yourself always. Because if you lead with love, self-love, you get so much more from everyone else around you.
We're constantly evolving and becoming, we're becoming who we were created to be. And that's one thing we talk about a lot on this podcast. That's beautiful. Taryn, what about you? If you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Sort of similar to what Jess said, but just to be yourself always. Like just we feel like we have to minimize ourselves, I think, in so many different situations. And something I've really tried to drill into my girls is just do what makes you happy, be yourself, don't change for other people, and surround yourself with people who understand and support that. Not everybody has to be this amazing athlete or be this, all these things that we try to, all these like labels that we try to put on ourselves, but be the best version of you that you can, and don't let people dim that light.
Well, you are both beacons of light, and I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing. Like I said, I will post the link to your book and to your social media and your website so people can easily get in touch with you. But thank you so much, Jess and Taryn, for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.